Hello everyone, welcome to Meet the People at SAP ANZ. I'm Chandra and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Thank you for joining us and I hope you and your family are safe. For you to watch this episode and other sessions that I run on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so you can be alerted when a live session is on and you can directly ask questions to our guests. So please press the follow button, the like button, the subscribe button on each of the channels. Also, if you want to hear from someone in the industry, please mention their name in the comment section and I'll try to get them here for you. In today's episode of Meet the People at SAP ANZ, I have Matt Goss. Matt Goss is the Managing Director of SAP Concur, Australia, New Zealand. He joined Concur in 2002, where he's held a number of senior management positions, including Country Manager Concur Philippines and Vice President Client Services Asia Pacific. Prior to joining Concur, he held senior consulting positions with Captura Asia Pacific and Acumen Alliance. So without any further ado, let me bring to you Matt Goss, MD, SAP Concur ANZ. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Shalendra. Good to talk with you today.
Welcome to Meet the People at SAP ANZ. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Very good, very good. Okay, Matt. So let's start with your career journey. So can you briefly explain your career journey to date?
Yeah, sure. Look, first up, I'd just like to sort of just recap on what you said as well, Shalendra, and just sort of pass out my best wishes to everybody as we try and sort of navigate through this this particular shutdown period. So certainly thoughts and prayers with everybody. But getting to my career, yeah, I've had quite an interesting career and quite a long time with SAP Concur. My journey, if I go way back, my journey actually started in the Australian military, and I guess that's where my love of technology was first sort of really sparked. I was very fortunate in the 90s to be involved in some very large-scale modernisation programs that the Australian Defence Force was undergoing at the time, and then I left there and worked for a consulting firm, a couple of consulting firms over the years. And really what we ended up doing is we ended up sort of focusing on supporting, it was through the dot-com boom. We had a lot of software companies that were coming into our market and getting established. And a lot of our work was actually helping those businesses get established and up and running in the ANZ market. And one of those companies ended up being a company by the name of Captura. And that was my first introduction to expense management. And from there, it was myself and it was a person by the name of Will Holmes Accord, who was the Chief Financial Officer of Ernst & Young. We then established Capture Asia Pacific. And then ultimately, that company was acquired by Concur. And then ultimately, Concur came into the SAP family at the end of 2014. So it's been quite a journey. And I think I'm just up to about 20 years in the expense management industry.
Well, and the IT industry, but was it anything in specific that that brought to the IT industry in particular, or it was expense management that you spent most of your career on?
It's interesting. I think it's sort of more, if I go back, I was a communications engineer. And so the early part of my career was all about data communications as those facilities were being established. And then I literally sort of transformed into the software industry. And I think, it's interesting. I don't think anybody sort of sets out for a career in expense management, but the reality is that at the time, certainly at the late 90s, early 2000s, there was all these fabulous technologies that were becoming available. And expense management was certainly one of those that was front and center. And from what was quite literally a point solution back in the early 2000s, it's evolved into a cloud-based platform that services many millions of users around the globe today.
Okay, so you've been in the industry for 20 years. How has the travel and expense industry evolved over the past few years?
Look, it's been significant. As I indicated when I started with Captura back in the early 2000s, expense management was essentially, it was a point solution. And really what sort of stimulated this category of software in our market was when the GST came in the early 2000s, because all of a sudden businesses needed to have a solution to deal with goods and services tax, and associated with that was fringe benefits tax as well. And so we progressed there from a point, client server based type solution. Concur is actually always from early days has been a category leader, where we actually ended up joining. We took expense and we connected it to travel, so you had a travel and expense solution. So we essentially assisted customers right from the travel planning right through to the acquittal. And if you look today, and I'll obviously speak for Concur, it is it's a sophisticated platform. At its core, we have travel, expense, and invoice, and sitting on top of that is a very rich ecosystem of solutions that further aid our customers as they manage this part of their business.
Okay, over to you again. Just a bit more about you. So, can you share one interesting fact about yourself that your colleagues also don't know?
Oh, that's a good question. And for the audience out there, I wasn't expecting that question. What's the question? Actually, I as a child, I actually grew up in Papua New Guinea, and so it was a very interesting experience. Papua New Guinea, just to the north of Australia, is that my father was up there with the Australian government, and we're actually there when Papua New Guinea gained independence. So it's a very exciting period, and an interesting period in that country's history.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, before I move on to the next section, I would just let you know that there are around about 10 people watching us, and I request you guys to ask your questions. If you've got any question, please mention them in the comment section, whether you do that on LinkedIn comments or YouTube comments or Facebook comments. The questions will come to us and we will shoot at Matt. Okay, Matt, at SAP currently, what is your role? What does your role entail as a managing director of SAP Concur? What is a day in a life? Well, I'm a consultant, so everything goes around day in a life for me. So explain to me the day in the life of Matt Goss.
Yeah, no, it's always an interesting day, that's for sure. So essentially I have responsibility for the Concur business in Australia and New Zealand. So that spans, from our sales, marketing, consulting, essentially the full business spectrum of the services that we offer our customers, and certainly, for the functions that our employees serve within the business. And then more broadly of that, and I'd say more importantly, is we're an important part of the SAP family, in Australia and New Zealand. So we're considered a line of business, and certainly, one of the important cloud businesses within the SAP portfolio. But over and above that is that I'm very fortunate, actually, is that my day is very varied. From sitting down and talking through our marketing strategy, to helping our sales team out with the engagements they're having with our prospects. Importantly, and most recently, during this period, is a lot of my time has actually been spent reaching out to our customers, essentially talking to the executive sponsors and those business owners, just to find out how we can help. It's a very difficult time for businesses during this period, and we want to make sure that our customers know that we're there to support them during this period. So it's very varied. It's sometimes I start out with what I think is going to be my day, and it turns out to be something completely different. So it's always an exciting day.
Okay, how's your career been inside SAP? So when SAP acquired Concur in 2014, since then, where were you at that point in your career, and where have you moved to become the MD? What has the journey been?
Yeah, actually, what I'll do, I'll go back a little bit further. I'll probably help explain my story. So when I came into Concur is when I was working for Captura, and the reality is there's only a handful of us that worked for Captura. But essentially, is as we got acquired, it was literally the bubble had burst from a .com era, but the reality is that the businesses that were viable were starting to grow again quickly. And so we were acquired in mid-2002, and I literally spent the next 7 or 8 years, essentially traveling around Asia Pacific as Concur as a business expanded from Australia, New Zealand, and we set up operations pretty much in all the major markets in Asia Pacific. So I was very fortunate, got to spend a bunch of time up in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Japan when we established our operations up there. So there was a lot of time on the road. And the fun part was, as well as we're evolving as a product, we were evolved from doing implementations that were Australian, New Zealand specific to where we're doing regional implementations across 10 to 15 countries, to then evolving that to doing global deployments for our customers. And so I did that for, so I had a VP role, regional VP role at that stage, looking after our services business. Then I was asked to go to, because the business, once around 2010 is that the business went through another accelerated growth period. And I was asked to go to the Philippines to establish a shared service center because, we established all these support and consulting businesses across the region. And so I went to the Philippines. It was around mid-2011. And I think I hired my first employee there. It was October the 1st, 2011. And when I left there, about 2 years later, we had nearly 400 employees. So it was quite a roller coaster ride, but a very enjoyable ride, getting the business in the Philippines established. And then I think the business took a little bit of pity on me and realized I probably needed a bit of a break. And so I then came back to Australia as the managing director. But there was really two prime responsibilities with that role. Is at that stage, Australia, that we were just in the process of putting in place managing directors across for our major markets. But secondly was to develop an SMB offering. And so at that stage, Concur was really thought of a big end of town solution. And so when I was up in the Philippines, we were also working on establishing a mid-market solution. And so when I came back to Australia, it was to establish that mid-market or SMB business. And that's grown into, it's probably the largest part of our business now. Just when you think of Australia as a whole, it is primarily a mid-market business. And so, we can now address, to those global type customers through to, we can sell to customers with as few as 10 employees and we offer a deployment in a day. So you literally get the true benefit of cloud software where it's sort of off the shelf, out of the box. We just do the quick configuration and essentially we have customers that walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning with an idea of what they want and they exit at 5 p.m. with a fully configured Concur Expense solution.
That I know because I have a lot of friends. Whenever I talk to them, the only conversation, it starts from somewhere, but they talk about Concur in the end, that how it has transformed their organization. But that's one thing. So when SAP acquired Concur, you were the managing director for...
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've essentially been in that role since we were acquired at the end of 2014. I've been in that role through to today.
Okay, good stuff. So let's look at this year. This year has been a roller coaster already. It looks like 2020 started 20 years ago, but the way it is going. When we started the year, the key focus of your role would have been very different to what they are today, I would assume. So what is your key focus in your current role today for this current year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think back to January where we had the majority of the Concur global organization in Seattle as we were doing the planning, and actually, I was in the process of organizing a global fundraiser for Concur for the bushfire appeal. And it almost, it almost seems a distant memory almost from as we've come back to Australia, and then we've entered this COVID period with the business shutdown. And so, look, what I'd say is primarily where our business has shifted is, Concur is a growth business, but the reality is our focus has come around to our customer. SAP, as a global business, and certainly SAP being a part of that business, is we bring a lot of bench strength. To the game for our customers. And so, we obviously, like a lot of other customers, we I think we've got about 100,000 employees in SAP, and I think just about everybody's working from home. We did that early so that we're in a position to support our customers, and certainly that literally has been our focus the last 3 weeks, of getting in front of our customers, making sure that they understand we're there to support them during this period, that it's business as usual. We're fortunate that we drink our own champagne, we use our own solutions, so we're able to transition to remote work quite quickly. And now it's just making sure that the customers are supported, they're maximising the value that they can drive from our solutions, and that literally has been the area of focus the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so tell me, what is the best thing about working at SAP? And I'm asking that question, and I'll frame it in a different fashion, because before the acquisition by SAP, what was the life like to what it is today when it is now SAP?
Yeah. It's a good question. Look, I've been very fortunate. So I've worked for a bunch of startups. I worked for a start. Essentially, Concur wasn't that big of a company when I joined them. That grew into quite a large global operation, and it's really being able to sort of enjoy the journey of the different maturity levels of a business. Concur is a fabulous company. It still is. It still has a wonderful heart and soul to the business. And what was really heartening for me, because you're getting acquired. We'd always been the acquirer as opposed to being the acquiree. It's almost gone with the blink of an eye. It was over 5 years ago. And SAP is a great company. It's a very large company, but the best way to describe it, it's a company with a heart. When you look at where the focus is, they have some enormous goals, like improving the lives of 1 billion people. For when you look at what we do from a corporate and social responsibility perspective, but then you take that at a macro level for what SAP can do, and they can have an enormous. It's a business that uses its impact well as far as to the betterment of the community, certainly the customers, and the different markets that we work. So really enjoyable. I have some great colleagues. It's certainly a fun place to be a part of. You'd be making a mistake if you thought you're sort of coming in as the cool kids. It's a very enjoyable organisation to work for.
Okay, innovation. I think, in my perspective, the way Concur has grown, for Concur, it's all about innovation, and it is an innovative solution. My perspective. Let's go towards that section and talk about innovation in Concur. So let's look at the current situation. What's your perspective? How are we helping our customers in the COVID situation today?
Sure. Look, I think first up, just sort of going to our co-CEOs, I think that they're out of the gate pretty quickly and making a range of tools available. So from Qualtrics with the teamwork Pulse, so that's freely available to organisations, so they can quickly pulse their employees to make sure they're well, what they need to be productive, so businesses can react quickly to the workforce. There's been some great stories with SAP Ariba's tool. That's for businesses that are changing their business model to need to connect with suppliers, so they've got free access to the global supply network. And certainly on Concur, what we did quite early at that stage, as the economy or the markets were starting to shut down, is we made TripIt, which is probably one of the most popular travel companion tools in the world, actually, which is a SAP Concur tool, is we made the professional version of that available to all travellers globally to help them sort of get home safely and stay connected with their employee, certainly their colleagues and their family. But just extending past that is what's important is certainly from an SAP Concur perspective is that businesses are aware of how they can sort of maximise the use of our tools that they have in place now, and that's certainly been I mentioned earlier part of our focus is, and so at this point in time cash preservation, cash flow is super important to businesses as the economy's closed down, and within Concur there's some great services you can take. If we look at Australia, so the the fringe benefits tax reporting period is just closed on 31st of March. One of the big mistakes that we know that businesses make is when they come to report their fringe benefits tax liability as it relates to meal and entertainment expenses, is the Australian government gives businesses a couple of different ways to calculate the FBT liability. With Concur, we help businesses so they can choose the right way, so they can minimise their tax liability in that respect. A lot of by virtue, where travel and expense is, our customers travel. They travel a lot. And they travel overseas, and so all of the VAT that businesses incur related to business travel, that's all reclaimable back from the tax office. And so, if you have Concur, it's simply a matter of going to our app center, connecting one of our tax partners to your system, and they can take care of the rest. And the reality is we have customers that are getting six-figure refunds back from the ATO by virtue of reclaiming that overseas tax. And probably thirdly, the other point I'd make is it's really important, that you have a well-defined expense management policy. The world has changed, and so you need to be able to ensure that you've obviously tuned your expense policy to match the business circumstance. You want rules that you can put in place to manage that, proactively manage that policy. And then you want the reporting so that you can see where that spend's occurring so that you can react quickly. And so they're just a few of the examples that you can use, to sort of protect your bottom line and also to manage that spend that's occurring. And to just extend that a little bit further, we talk about innovation. And it's interesting. And I was actually having a look at the book that you authored. I didn't realise that you're an author of note. And as far as, but when you look at practical applications of machine learning, AI, etc., within Concur, you can use a solution such as Concur Detect, and essentially what it's doing is it will go and audit every single line item that's processed through a Concur solution, to the point where we can actually read all the items in a receipt. We can ensure that when somebody has used a particular vendor, we can actually bounce out to social media and just validate to ensure that that they actually did go to, was a restaurant that they did attend. We can check average meal prices. So there's a lot of tools that we can actually bring to bear that does help a business ensure that their spend is compliant. And so, other examples that I would also give as far as technology, and certainly has become very topical over the last couple of years, is employee risk management. And so, by virtue of Concur being a platform, and so we have all the data. If somebody's planning to go on a business trip, we have from the travel planning information through to their itinerary book data, to when they're traveling, to where they're swiping their credit card, taking a photo of a receipt. And so we essentially put all of this data up into a solution called Concur Locate. So heaven forbid, if something does occur, is that a business can quickly locate where their employees are in that affected area, and then they can communicate with them. And then if as required, they can offer assistance to them. So there's, we've certainly evolved. If we go back to when we're talking about a point solution, to travel and expense and invoice, and then these value-added services that leverage all the data within our solution to offer these additional services to our customers.
So can I just push a bit of boundaries there and say, what kind of innovation are you doing within SAP Concur, apart from what you mentioned, that would help in the COVID situation? And I think you mentioned a very good idea. It was a very good idea that you could actually figure out where your employees are at that particular point in time, because you're scanning somewhere or you're taking a picture of a receipt. So you would understand if your customers are, or your employees are in an affected area of COVID at a particular point in time based on the receipt. I think that's a very good point. But anything else that you're doing apart from that in the innovation space?
Yeah, so just to sort of just to elaborate further on the point with Concur Locate as well, is that it's quite interesting as how relevant that solution has become is, to give you a personal example, is that when we're in Seattle in January, the hotel that we were staying at is essentially a block away. There was a shooting where 7 people were actually shot. And with Concur Locate is that we're able to quickly connect and communicate and identify to ensure that employees were safe. And I would take that a step further, is to where you do have situations such as the pandemic, is where you are looking to identify where your employees are and ensure that the safe return. If we just look at SAP, I mean, at any one time we have many thousands of people are traveling, and so it's ensuring that we can safely manage their return to where they're working from. So we're talking more about innovation. So look, it's probably the best way that I could explain from, I think everybody would sort of, doing expenses is not something you sort of sit down and typically look forward to. But the goal of Concur has really been to essentially take that process away and automate it for you. And so, the reality is doing your expense report now, it's simple as just taking a photo of a receipt. We'll import it, we'll match it up with the credit card transaction, we'll put it into the monthly expense report for you. If you have a meeting, you just need to forward that meeting to your expense report, and it'll add the attendees in. And so essentially when you get to the end of the month, is all you're actually having to do is just validate that information is correct, and all the hard work is done. And so we're literally trying to put ourselves out of business, would be the best way I'd describe, is to essentially, and what we're finding is, as the tool, certainly as we're bringing more machine learning bots into play, is that we're able to, things that were difficult to automate 5 or 6 years ago, we're now able to automate, and once again just make that a very seamless, easy process for our end users.
Sorry, one thing I must say, and I've been using Concur myself for I think, if not anything less than 6-7 years. And one thing that changed my life, and I tell you one story. I was at Accenture, managing director at Accenture, and one thing we used to do was send all the receipts to Dalian. To do that, I personally used to take all the receipts, stick it on a piece of paper, and take a photocopy of that, and send the originals to Dalian. We used to ask, isn't it possible for them to just take a picture and attach it and send it? And I think that was the biggest innovation that made our lives so easy while we are on the field trying to talk to customers. Well, that's not what the admin work is not at the top of your mind, because you need to talk to customers and get
Correct.
stuff done, not taking pictures, not collecting receipts and sending them somewhere. By taking a picture, it's a far easy process to do. I think that was a big change.
Completely, I agree. Absolute game changer. I mean, the reality is, early days is I think the latest innovation back in the mid 2000s is where you could print out a fax sheet with a barcode, and we would fold that up and put it in an envelope, and we'd send it off to the back office, and they would scan the barcode to acknowledge that the receipts have been received. But the reality is now it literally is as simple as taking a photo of that receipt. We'll read it, we'll digitize it, or in most cases we'll allocate it to the correct account code, and then when you come to complete your expense report, if there's something's missing, we're going to flag that needs to be completed. If there's some non-compliance, it's a couple of interesting facts for you as well, is that by virtue of the rules engines that we have in Concur, we can actually do some very interesting analysis that we can do. Like we know, and so we've taken about a block of about $100 million worth of spend, and we've had a look at it on an annual basis. So representative customers across the Australia, New Zealand market, and what we do know is that that 4% of all expenses that are submitted are flagged as duplicates, and So if you're looking, if you look at an average size organization has $1 million worth of spend, if you haven't got something simply as validating that an expense hasn't been previously submitted, you're already behind. And these things happen simply. You've gone and caught a taxi, you've got the receipt, you submit it, and then all of a sudden the credit card transaction comes through a couple of months later or a month or so later, you submit that, you've, in a lot of cases it's accidental, you've inadvertently, double claimed an expense. Other things is we know that, generally about 20 to 20, it sort of hovers between 20 to 24% of all expenses that are submitted essentially contravene some form of business rule against the company's expense policy. And so, just simply having the controls in place in itself is going to save a business an inordinate amount of money. And secondly, look, we've talked about, just the simplicity, when we look at our workforces and offering best of breed tools, is that, where do you want your employee time? Do you want them focused on sort of slaving away on an expense report, or just going through and taking a photo of a receipt? It's actually probably one of our best sales tools. Actually, the amount of referrals we'll get where somebody's actually been at the airport and saw someone just taking a photo of a receipt and sort of asked them, "What are you doing?" So I'm doing my expense report, and it's a great way to start the discussion with a new customer.
No, that's brilliant. Actually, that changed my life as well, because as I told you, that we had to take all those receipts, put it somewhere, and duplication is something which is very interesting, because I myself have done that a couple of times, accidentally though. And it was such fun that the moment you upload it, you get a message that this is a duplicate receipt. Can you have a look? And you do that before even you submitting. And I think machine learning could do a very good activity there to actually figure out if that's a duplicate or not in the automation sense.
Oh, look, there's a bunch of things we do that that a lot of organisations wouldn't probably consider. Our expense, our taxis occurring on weekends. Mileage. Actually, the interesting thing is that I think a few years back, the second biggest area of non-compliance was mileage expenses. Mm-hmm. And so when we then introduced Google Maps integration into Concur, so that if you're claiming a personal car mileage, is you actually have to enter in the destinations within Google Maps, and it will then do the calculation. Is the actual claimable amount of personal car mileage expenses dropped significantly, and then we took that a step further, where essentially you've got a mileage application built into the Concur mobile app. And essentially, when you start a personal trip, it'll just automatically start calculating the mileage. And when let's say you get to the end of the day, or it could be the end of the week, is that we'll record those transactions, and you essentially just identify which was personal, which was business related, and we'll automatically claim the expense for you, and we'll ensure that it's an accurate account of the travel that you've conducted.
I have a question before I get into the next section. Are you or are we working with the ATO? Because I think that will create a lot of easiness for both the employees and the tax office, because things could become streamlined.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Is that the best way to answer that is that we are fully compliant with the Australian Tax Office. So I think probably the best thing I can say is that when customers, when they're buying software from SAP Concur, is that they can be assured that it's fully ATO compliant. And we're always looking at the new rules and regulations that come out to see how we can sort of further optimize what we provide our customers. I was talking a little while ago about fringe benefits tax. That in itself, that literally transformed the mid-market business for Concur, because all of a sudden businesses, what is traditionally a very difficult, tedious process, quite literally with a few mouse clicks within Concur, they can figure out, okay, well, actually, what's the best way to report my FBT liability? And to be fair, in the vast majority of the cases, just the savings from the FBT liability alone actually paid for the Concur solution. So there's a bunch of things, so we're always having a good close look at that as to where we can sort of further optimize the experience and certainly reduce our customers' liability.
Okay. Case studies. Is there any one case study that you can share with us, with the audience, where SAP Concur has helped an organization improve their business processes altogether?
Actually, I would probably bring your attention to the most recent case. It's a video case study that we just published on our website, was with the Bureau of Meteorology. And certainly the reason why that's near and dear to my heart is that both my wife and daughter are in the Rural Fire Service. So they spent certainly from probably, was it November through to late January out there fighting the fires. And the Bureau of Meteorology last year decided that they were going to undertake a number of business transformations. And Concur was one of the major transformations that they undertook. And so there's a really good of account as to when they were going through looking to transform, obviously they wanted to go off the shelf, wanted to go vanilla, they wanted to get the benefit early. And so that they had a fabulous result. But I think what's also important, not so much the software, it's the approach that the Bureau took themselves. Mm-hmm. Their approach to managing, it's fine having the great software, but it's the change management, it's the way you deploy those systems into the organization. And they just did an absolute outstanding job at that. And so, I would, we have a range of some really quite interesting video testimonials, and you can go to, if you go to, concur.com.au, there's a bunch of them there for you to take a look at.
Okay. I would now jump onto the audience questions. There are a few, and let's see. Let's go from the first one on YouTube, and that's from Amit Walecha, and he said, first of all, hi Amit, how are you? He said, COVID-19 has brought in challenges for everyone. How do you think the challenge can be converted into opportunity? A very interesting question.
Yeah, look, I would probably change the question around a little bit to say not so much turn it into an opportunity, but look, I think for a bunch of organizers, I'd answer that question in two parts. I'd go back to, I was with Concur in 2008 as when we went through the global financial crisis. What became, what a lot of businesses realized is they really didn't have the solutions in place to really, assist those businesses as we exited the global financial crisis. And so if you look at, at T&E spend, it's actually it's the second largest controllable spend outside of payroll from an operational spend perspective. And so, it's a really important area of focus. And so, we had, the Excel spreadsheet in large part was our biggest competitor, is businesses realized they needed to transition. And I think that'll be one of the big results that will come, from this period, is organizations that, have already transitioned their solutions to the cloud. They've been able to, they're very resilient to the conditions that we find ourselves in. They've been able to transition their employees home, without too much of an impact on their productivity. For the organizations that haven't made that move, that still have those on-prem related systems, becomes very difficult, as your organization becomes decentralized. And so, I think, certainly a lot of businesses are on the digital transformation journey. I would suggest this is well and truly going to push it higher on the agenda for them once we come out of this period. Okay.
I hope, Amit, you got your answer. If you've got any other question, please put it in the comment section. Okay, there is, on LinkedIn, there is a question from Mendu Chakrapani. Hi, Mendu, how are you? And he's saying, what is the impact of COVID-19 on your business? It's an open-ended question.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. Is first up, so Concur travel expenses. The reality is, and look, just wanted to take the time is that the travel industry has been hit extremely hard through this. And certainly if I look Australia, New Zealand, a lot of our business partners are corporate travel management companies, and their cash flow has gone from a value in some cases down to zero. So it's very difficult time. As far as our business as a whole, look, Concur is a very large, resilient business. The reality is we become very important to businesses through these particular times, is because they're looking to manage cash flow, ensure that spend is compliant, where they do need visibility. And so if anything, in a lot of cases, it actually accelerates a potential customer's journey to coming on to a solution such as Concur. So that would be my answer, is that that's from a business standpoint, but also from we're no different to any other business, is that we've got a large team of people both here in Australia or globally, and one of the things that's been really encouraging with our businesses, and I think it comes from our co-CEOs, was sort of day one, it was all about our employee health and well-being, and that's been the focus. And so I think we sort of we got on top to make sure that our staff are okay, and we've quickly pivoted now to ensure that that our customers are okay and that we can serve them well during this period. And I think that's one of the benefits our customers get, is that there's a lot of bench strength that comes into play when you have a partner such as SAP and SAP Concur.
Yep. And I think that is one of the best things for us to work for SAP, with the kind of leadership that we've got and the kind of messaging that we've got from them, which is phenomenal. One question before you go, and that comes from me as well. For our customers, what do you think they can do now with respect to travel and expense management as they look to protect their bottom lines? Because the bottom lines are being eroded as we speak. And so what 2 or 3 things that they should do, and what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so the first thing is that they need to, obviously the spending within an organisation has changed. The reality is that there's a lot of expense management policies that are sitting on shelves gathering a lot of dust. Is that the business needs to clearly articulate the expense management policy to their organisation, because that discretionary spend, the controls on that, have become extremely critical. So that's point one. Second point, whether you're using Concur or another solution out there, is you then need to go and adjust your business rules to support that policy. So, this is, in a lot of cases, you want to be capturing the spend before it occurs as opposed to after it occurs. So, just ensuring that clearly articulated policy, you've got the business rules in place to support that policy. And then lastly, that you've got that real-time reporting, so that you can continue to manage. It's actually, it's interesting. One of the primary reasons a lot of our customers buy our accounts payable Concur invoice solution is because the first thing that actually happens is the invoice is scanned into Concur. And so from literally as that invoice hits the front desk of that operation, a business then has visibility to that, so that they're in a much better position to manage their cash flow and then their end of month liabilities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That was very, very articulated 3-point answer. Thank you. I hope our customers and people who are watching get some help from this, and they can implement in their processes. Matt, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, very enjoyable.
And it was a great talk. And I think the kind of work that SAP Concur has done in the last few years has been amazing. And I think it has touched many, many employees in the world, one way or the other. And the employee experience has certainly changed because of Concur. So I would like to thank you, because I can only have access to you. And I would like to thank you for making that happen. And thank you very much for being on the show.
No, thank you. It was a lot of fun. And thanks for those who are listening in. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.
So that was Matt Goss, the Managing Director for SAP Concur in ANZ, part of SAP. Thank you all for watching this show. I hope that you're all safe. You're staying indoors. This is the time to stay indoors and flatten the curve. And I think we in Australia are doing quite a good job. For others around the world, please make sure that you stay indoors, don't go out. This is the time that we want to be safe and stay home. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week with another episode of Meet the People at SAP ANZ. Bye now.